Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. All right, welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie Rickey, and today is a special episode because I have invited my parents to join me to talk a little bit about their experience of being the parents of a pastor. And I think it kind of goes along with my very autobiographical preaching in the last few weeks. As you feel like you're getting to know me, this is just another way for you get to feel like you know me a little bit better, and you can hear it directly from people who've known me my entire life. So there's no place for me to hide as we go through this. My mom and I did try to do this interview once already today, but as I am learning all of this tech stuff, I didn't record the sound. And so it's a blessing in disguise because it means my dad gets to join us. But it is just... It is a subtle plug for our need for a tech coordinator. If you enjoy doing any sort of technology stuff, we are looking for volunteers and for a paid position in technology here at the church. And so that's just a little plug for that. And also another plug for, we will be looking to hire a youth person, which is something that I did. And that's kind of how I got started in ministry. And so that's a little bit about what's going on in the church, and I'm going to now shift it to visiting with my parents. So Lester and Shirley, thanks for being on the podcast. So this is both an audio and a video podcast, so there will be people that are joining us just by listening, so you can say hi. All right, so why don't we start just really briefly and share a little bit about the two of you. So where do you live? What do you do? Kind of your background.
Okay, I grew up in Arlington, still in Arlington. Went to one-year college at SUU. And then I worked as a nurse's aide. Then I got married. And then I had my kids, and then I babysat, and then I worked at home health aide, and now I'm retired.
Very good.
Okay, I grew up in Willow Lake, if anybody knows where that is. It's a small town, smaller than Arlington.
Thriving metropolis of Willow Lake.
Then I went to Denver to trade school. I graduated from trade school, worked out there for a year, and then came back to Arlington to, I wanted to go to Sioux Falls, but there wasn't a job there. There was one open here in Arlington. I thought, well, I'll take that until something opens up in Sioux Falls. Almost 50 years later, I'm still here.
It was where you're meant to be.
Yeah, I met Shirley, and we got married and had our family here. I was a mechanic for a lot of years. Then I sold fire extinguishers, and then I worked at the care center, and I'm retired. And now I work for the city mowing the cemetery in the summer. So.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a pretty good recap. That seems right from my memory and what I've been told. So, I think one of the things that probably people are interested in knowing is, did you ever imagine that you would have a child who would be a pastor?
I didn't.
My mother really wanted a pastor in the family. I wasn't cut out for that.
So you just passed that mantle right on to me.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So one of the things that I've shared my call story on the podcast before, and part of that call story was that I finally accepted my call into ministry at church camp, and I came home that day that camp ended to your house, and I told the two of you, I really think I'm called to be a pastor. And your response to me was, it's about time you figured that out.
That's cool.
So my question to you is, when did you know, which was clearly sooner than I knew, that this was going to be my path?
Probably when you were in Millbank. Then we knew. every time we heard you speak, like, this is what she needs to do.
Yeah. Well, like I told you before, when you first made your first sermon in high school, at that Easter sunrise service, that was very good. But I didn't think you'd go on to do that. But then you went on to college and majored in theology, which I really didn't know what you were going to do with that.
I wasn't going to be a pastor. That's what I had told you.
We brought it up and you very adamantly said, no.
I am not going to be. So then we went on to seminary, and then you're going to go on to teach religion, but you had to get your doctorate, and then that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of school, so I'm going to get a job for a while, and then maybe come back. And then you got your job, and then you...
Which I got my job because of Dad's job as a fire extinguisher salesman. It was Dad who actually got me into youth ministry. Yeah. God works in unexpected and mysterious ways.
Yeah.
I was just happy that he was looking for somebody and
you were looking.
And you were looking. I was just happy for you to get a job.
You were happy for me to move out, I think, is what it really was.
Not necessarily, but you were looking for something to do. It just give you something to do anyway.
Yeah, no, it was a good experience for me, and I'm glad that I got that job and went down that road. One of the questions that I thought about earlier was, so I grew up in the Lutheran Church. That's the church that you belong to and that you attend. But as we all know, I am a Methodist pastor. And so I was just curious, what was that like for you to have me kind of switch churches and switch denominations and follow my calling in a different church?
Like I said, it's okay with us if you're Methodist. And you started going to Methodist church as a teenager because the Lutheran church didn't have anything for the youth at that time. And the Methodist church did, and you liked it over there really well. You liked the minister. And then actually you didn't know what you were going to do. You went to Baptist college, and then you went to non-denominational seminaries. So you still didn't have a church until you actually went back to the youth ministry job at a Methodist church. And then it kind of leaned that way. And that's fine with them. It's fine.
It is. I told you this, just don't, like you were going to Methodist church when you were still in high school yet. I said, don't leave the Lutheran church yet until you're a little older and you know for sure what you want. So that was the only thing I said. I'd rather have you go to the Methodist church than no church.
Yeah. Well, I do remember, I'm glad. I do remember you both saying that, sitting me down and saying, don't join a church for a pastor. You need to make sure that it's that you're not leaving a church just because of one thing you don't like, or, and I remember very specifically, don't join a church just for the pastor. And I don't know how wise, I mean, that was super wise when you, especially considering Methodists, since we move around all the time. If you join a church for the pastor might not be there 3 years down the road. That's how our system is. But I thought that was really wise. And even as I've grown up, that's been something that's really stuck with me is, and I think that's why for so long I didn't join any other churches, because I was like, I want to find what makes sense to me. So you have been very supportive. So as a kid, there was nothing that made you say, this girl's destined for the pulpit. I wasn't, holier than all the other kids.
No.
I can't even say that without laughing because I know how much it's not true.
Well, you were ornery.
I'm a little stubborn, but you know. So this week we've been preaching. I've been preaching in James for the month of September, and this week we were talking about the power of the tongue, and I was sharing kind of my own journey with trying to tame my tongue, and shared a little bit about my that I had a bit of a sharp tongue growing up. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah.
I remember that so much, but your dad does.
Oh yeah.
My argument is, I mean, I talked a little bit about how it was a bit of an insecurity for me because I just didn't know that people would like me, but I also think there is a very real part of it is that my brother is so much older and bigger than me that I learned early on to fight using my words because I had no chance to physically defend myself.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, my brother is 7 years older than me, and he's 6'3", and he graduated high school when I was in 5th grade. So you can imagine growing up in the same house. He was always at least double my size. So he used to play a game with me called Bulldozer, where I would lay on the floor and he would just roll over on top of me, and just and then just get stuck, and then I couldn't breathe, and that was the kind of fun games that we had. I should maybe have him on the podcast at some point so he can defend himself. But I mean, I think all of that kind of goes, and I just got to be very defensive with my words, and I knew how to kind of cut people, and because I don't know, that's what I did. And then, Dad, do you remember that car and those bumper stickers that I used in the sermon?
Well, I remember the car, but I don't remember the bumper sticker.
No?
No?
Well, I guess in a way that relieves me. I'm sure you probably weren't super proud of me driving around with that one bumper sticker in particular.
No,
I don't remember it.
I don't remember it. But
yeah,
I just remember you out there helping me change the front fender on the car.
Yes, yeah, a little fender bender outside of Taco John's caused that one. But that's not what we don't need to go into that today. That's not necessary. But I do think, it is important because I think there has been a journey in how I use my words, and I do think I have tried over the years to be very mindful of what I say, and that I'm trying to encourage people rather than always having a comment for every single thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
The same gift that my sister and my mother had. Like to talk a lot, and that sort of thing. Not so much me, but.
All right, wait, you're not saying that you don't like to talk a lot?
No.
I'm laughing because there's a joke within our family that my dad cannot leave any place, and it takes him half an hour to say goodbye.
Yeah, it does.
Hey, the way I grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah, walk out to the car and just talk for another half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think again it goes to how we communicate with one another, and I think growing up having that it matters to give that time and attention to people and to hear what they have to say and to respond to that genuinely. And I think that's another way that we can use our words to build people up and to build relationships up. Because Dad, I do remember growing up, like you could strike up a conversation with anybody. We'd be in Walmart and you'd be having a conversation with someone in the line, and do you know that person? No. But I mean, I think that's the mark of someone who can use their words to build relationship and build, camaraderie and understanding even with people you don't know.
Mhm.
So, that's another side of it that I didn't really talk about, but I think part of it is I don't do that as naturally as you do.
Oh,
Oh, I think
well, I think you do. I think you do.
Well, maybe I fake it. I don't know that. I don't know that I talk to as many people in Walmart as you do, Dad. But that's not
But I probably do most of them.
a. But um, what do you? I mean, you've been kind of following along since the pandemic. Having our sermons and stuff online has been a great way for kind of the family to get to tune in to hear me preach and when they want to. And what has been your take on the Book of James as we've been going through it?
I guess I've not studied the Bible probably as much as I should have, and really didn't know all these things that you're talking about. So it was quite interesting for me. You know?
Yeah, well, James, like he tells it like it is. You don't have to study it to what he's saying, because he says what he's saying. He just says it.
Yeah. During the service this week, we used Mentimeter to kind of have people type in what they thought of the Book of James, like what is one word, and blunt was one of the more popular answers.
Yeah.
And convicting, because he says he says exactly what he means. There's kind of no wiggle room to be like, well, maybe he meant that, or maybe he meant that.
Yeah.
No, what he says is what he means, and it's, for me, it's been really convicting on are the things that I'm doing and the things that I'm saying reflect what I say that I believe. And that's, for me, that's been, I think, why I keep preaching my own story, because that's what is going through my head all the time with James is, am I doing what James says I should be doing? And then, hopefully I do see progress in that. And hopefully you, as my parents, see that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we really enjoy watching you.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
of course, we might be prejudiced.
You might be biased, but Well, one of the other things that Mom and I were talking about earlier with the Book of James, and especially about what we say, is how, thinking about, your kids kind of take on the stuff that you do naturally. And so right now I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my 3-year-old repeats everything that we say. Like, he's in that stage now of picking up new words all the time. And so now Jason and I are very, not that we weren't careful before, but we've just noticed that the things that we tend to say, he says. And how, and I think it applies more broadly, but you can really see it in your kids and the things that you pick up, just because you're there. I think of one of the things that has come strongly through Mom's side of the family. We kind of mentioned it. Something that your mom used to say that you say now, and then that I find myself saying, oh, for Pete's sake. It's not a bad thing, but it's something that it just comes out, and it comes out, without me even really thinking about it. It's just natural for me to say it, because that's what I heard said, and that's what you heard said, and
Yeah.
You grew up with it, yeah.
Yeah. But, it's true that, especially in our households and in our families, like, we pass on things that we do and say without even really realizing it. And it's not until, like, I leave that I start to notice, like, the things that I do because you two did them. It's not until Jason doesn't do it, and then why aren't you doing it that way?
Because his folks didn't do it that way.
Right. Yeah. So, I think that's part of the reason why it's so important that what we say and what we do reflect what we believe, because other people pick up on it, and especially our kids. But
Yeah.
so I don't know, maybe my snarkiness came from the two of you.
It might have.
Dad is not going to own that whatsoever.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't me.
I used to be very sarcastic, but I got over that.
See, and I remember Mom always being pretty quiet, and so,
I am pretty quiet.
Well, with her sisters, she didn't have any choice.
Yeah, I didn't have much room to talk. They talked all the time.
My mom has two older sisters and a younger brother, and the two older sisters in particular, they like to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were destined to be able to talk. You got it from both sides of the family.
Yeah, it's just natural. So, I don't know, is there anything else that you think this church needs to know about me so that they feel like they can know and trust their pastor? This is going to be their opportunity to hear it straight from those who know me best.
Oh, well.
The one thing, if Katie tells you something, she believes it. That's what she believes, and you can pretty much put it in the bank,
No, that's true. I think they're pretty lucky. I'm sure they'll feel that way after they get to know you too.
Well, hopefully this goes a little bit further in doing that, and
yeah, hopefully.
And when you guys come down again, you guys did come and worship once in our outdoor service, but hopefully you'll be able to come down again sometime and join us for worship again, and then people will know who you are. Well, sort of. With the mask on, it's a little harder. So.
Yeah.
But,
well, someday the mask will be gone, then they'll know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, thank you so much for joining me for What's Going On, and I hope that you enjoyed this special episode and getting to hear a little bit about life as the parent of a pastor. Did I say that right? Yeah, I said that right. I don't know why that's such a strange sounding phrase, but that's what you are. You guys you parented a pastor, and you didn't even know it.
That's too.
Very proud.
All right. Well, I love you both, and thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of What's Going On. We'd love to have you join us for worship on Sundays at 8:30 or 11, either in person in our sanctuary with our safety protocols in place, or online on our website at www.firstumcyankton.com.